Hello, so in this video, I'm going to go over the Pythagorean theorem, which sounds really complicated because it's a big name and it's really hard to say, but it's actually really simple, and I know you guys can get the hang of this. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this little triangle that I have here. Now, this is what we call a right triangle. Now, the reason they call this a right triangle is because it has an angle in it that is equal to 90 degrees. And what's really cool is that the 90 degrees is actually shown as a little square in the corner of the triangle. So if you ever come across a triangle with a square in the corner, that tells you that it is 90 degrees there. The other thing to keep in mind is that the side that is across from this 90-degree angle is called the hypotenuse. Now you're going to need to remember that because we're going to use it later in a trig lesson. So right across here is the hypotenuse. Right across. Okay, the other two sides doesn't really matter what they are, but I like to just label them A and B. And for the purpose of this lesson, the hypotenuse, I always label C. Okay, and you'll see why in a minute. So, the Pythagorean theorem states that the hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides, which basically means that if we take the hypotenuse squared, it is going to be equal to a squared plus b squared, which is where the formula comes from. So here is our formula. Oh, I don't know what happened there. So c squared is equal to the other two sides, both squared and added together. Okay, so this is our formula. We're going to keep that in mind when we do the rest of the lesson. So let's go down and we'll go through some examples. So the first example says find the hypotenuse of the triangle. We can see that there is a 90-degree angle there. So we do have a right angle, which means we can use the Pythagorean theorem. So you'll notice that across from the 90 is the hypotenuse. So for this particular example, we are going to find the length of the hypotenuse. Now, from the formula, you saw that I said that C was always the hypotenuse. So I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to label this one C. When you use the formula, it doesn't really matter which side is A and B. It really just matters that the hypotenuse is C. So I'm going to label this one A and this one B. And we're going to substitute those values into our formula to solve it. So here we go. I always set it up with the formula c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And then I'll substitute the values in for a and b. So a we said was 5. So it becomes 5 squared. And b we set to 12. So 12 squared. 5 squared just means 5 times 5. So we get 25. And 12 squared times 12 squared is 144. So what you're going to do is add those up. 25 plus 144. And so when you add them up, you get 169. Now, we're not quite done yet because what's happened is we've just figured out what c squared was, but the length of the hypotenuse is actually just c. So what you're going to do is take the square root of 169, and when you take the square root of that, you get that 13. So now we know that this side here is 13 meters. Just like that, super simple to do. Let's look at the second example here. Find the missing side of the triangle. Now you'll notice in this one it's a little bit different because the 90 is here and across from it is our hypotenuse. But we already know what the hypotenuse is in this example. So what we're actually doing is we're going to find one of the other two sides, so either A or B. So let's label everything. The hypotenuse I always label C, and then I label the other two sides A and B. So I'll make this one A and this one B. We're going to set it up same way we did the previous one, using c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So again, I just use it like it is. We don't know what b is, but that's okay. We're going to sub in 8 for a and 15 for c. So 15 squared equals 8 squared plus b squared. I'm going to find the square root of those the squares of those numbers. So 15 squared is 225. 8 squared, 8 times 8 is 64, plus b squared. So now you'll notice that the 64 is on this side. What we're going to do is move it to the other side. When we move it to the other side, it actually becomes subtraction. So we're going to do 225 minus 64 equals b squared. So we'll do that subtraction. And I get 161. And again, because what we really want is b, and we've solved for b squared, we're going to take the square root. So the square root of 161 will be equal to b. So I take the square root of 161, and I get 12.7 if I round it, and that's centimeters. And just like that. So I've shown you how the Pythagorean theorem works. I showed you how to find the hypotenuse, and I showed you how to find one of the other two sides. That's really the only thing you're going to do. If you're looking for the hypotenuse, you're going to use this formula here. And if you're looking for one of the other two sides, you're going to follow this example right here. There's some practice stuff for you to do, and there is a short little quiz so that I can see that you know how to do this. All right, have fun.